It's that time of the week. We are back for the Jump Show. Can't wait to get going once again. Alongside Jake Price and Dan Overall. Andrew Blair White filled in last week. Many thanks to him. Annoyingly, the viewers seemed to go up for that video. I'm not really sure whether it was him or Cheltenham. I hope it's because it was Cheltenham and not because he was the stand-in. But there is some controversy as far as that's concerned. Anyway, on we go regardless. And please do remember to like and subscribe this video. We'd love to get 125 to 150 likes on this one. It does help us out, and it'd be great to see. So please do get involved with that. We are going to be, among other races, previewing the first British Grade 1 of the season this week. The Betfair Chase, of course. Only 4 runners going to post, but a decent 4, it has to be said. Guys, good to see you. I know that you both had fairly hefty weekends at Prestbury Park over the course of the last few days. Dan, you're nodding your head. I know that it's been a bit of a road to recovery this week.
Well, my road to recovery began towards the back end of last week, and then I decided to drive 3.5 hours to Cheltenham and have a couple of very heavy nights, and then it's kind of been the same pattern all over again. Just thank God I'm not at Haydock or Ascot this weekend, otherwise I think I'd just be on this self-destructive pattern, never ending. But Cheltenham is always a delight. It was great to speak to, again, so many people who'd come up to us in the fish and elsewhere, just talking racing. I think the November meeting in particular, because it's a bit smaller, and it's generally a bit more for the hardcore fans. You get a right good mix of people. So an absolute delight meeting so many people. And if you did come up to us and say hi, thank you very much, because it was a real treat.
Let's kick off, shall we? It's been an eventful week in the racing world. I suppose a few of the trainers who have been in form, Emma Lavelle, Venetia Williams, continue to be in form. Nigel Twiston-Davies being another one. So let's pick out some highlights from the last week. Jake, should we start with you? Your notable performance of the last 7 days.
Yeah, I mean, obviously there's plenty of action across Cheltenham that I could have gone for. Other podcasts have done brilliant reviews of that. But I'm going to be going to Exeter on Monday for a Norse's Limited Handicap Chase. Type of race that I really like to get stuck into. And the horse that really stood out for me was Pimlico Point. Now he's trained by Kerry Lee, and he was off the track for 316 days before running at Exeter on Monday. He had previous novice form where he beat Super Survivor and Autonomous Cloud, who both rated 130, and that was on his hurdles debut. And he's also finished third behind Marble Sands, who obviously Tom's a horse you like as well, and he's rated 143 now. So he had some good novice form. He's making his chase debut off a mark of 118, put in a brilliant round of jumping. He'd had a wind up since his last pulled up effort, which was, as I said, 316 days ago. And yeah, he ended up finishing second, only beating a length by Wise Guy, who was given a great ride by Nico and looks to have improved quite a bit. So yeah, Pimlico Point stayed on all the way to the line. I'm sure he'll be up to winning next time, especially with that run under his belt.
Yeah, I was actually quite taken by that one as well. So yeah, fingers crossed, Jake, we can have some fun with Pimlico Point throughout the course of the rest of the campaign. Dan, what about you? Are you going to go somewhere away from Cheltenham, or are you sticking with Prestbury?
So on this section, generally, I've kind of gone with some rogue ones who have finished like third, fourth, down the field, nowhere, that kind of thing, just to, add a bit of flavour to things. But there's only one horse I could speak about this week, and it's a horse who I'm going to have a strong love affair with, I hope, for many a year, and that is Broadway Boy. I loved him towards the back end of last season, and I thought, this is a horse. He's going to be nice. He's going to be a nice chaser going places. When he's made his chase debut, I was like, oh my God, this could be something special. In October at Cheltenham, even though he got beat by Flooring Porter, my love affair grew because I just thought he was just so tough a game. And my God, he absolutely battered them on the weekend. I was absolutely in love, although it did come with a bit of a tale of betting woe, really, because he was about 7-2, like joint second, third favourite when markets opened. On the Friday evening, we were out. I checked the market, so he was about 11-2. I was like, what's happening? This is brilliant. But kind of in a bit of a distracted mood. Didn't put a bet on. Other things were going on. I thought it'll be about that when I get to the track tomorrow. Get to the track tomorrow. Head's a bit fuzzy. Look at the price. He's 11-4. Okay, right. It's not the end of the world. I still like him. I'll still back him. Then Jake accosts me to go speak to some of the Sharp Object Brigade. And then all of a sudden there's a drink in my hand. I'm like, can't really go anywhere now. So as soon as that's kind of finished and we finish with talking to people, I can literally see them walking out onto the course. I'm like, I still haven't got a bet on. No idea what price he was. I was going to try and run to the ring because I can't get any reception on my phone. I literally get about to the parade ring and I just hear And they're off. I was like, oh, jeez. No. He's got off 9-4. I haven't had a penny on. So I stand in the corner near some steps where I try to get some signal. So I'm now betting in running. And after being 11-2 last night, I managed to get on at healthy 2-1. And it was probably the most satisfactory bet I had all weekend, regardless. What a horse. So lovable, so tough. Jumps. He made such a weird jump at the third last and still managed to gain lengths out of it. I love him. I will follow him till the end of the earth. I'm not normally that kind of sentimental punter, but God, I love this horse.
Oh, you know, that was one of the great anecdotes. That story took me from kind of sadness to happiness, and then to sadness, and then to happiness again.
A classic tale.
I didn't know what to feel there, Dan. But you know, I'm really glad that you managed to get on, because if you hadn't, all we'd be hearing about now was the fact that you hadn't got on. So, yeah, delighted that you managed to get that 2-1. I have to say.
Hopefully, we'll get a movie about that soon.
That's coming soon. It's in the works.
Right, back to the racing. My horse to take out from the last week. I'm not going to go to Cheltenham either. I'm actually going to join Jake and go to Exeter on Monday. It was actually a really good card, and also one of my previous horses to follow from weeks gone by was Arclight, who actually went and won again, this time in listed company. I think she looks a nice chaser, but I'm not going to put her up again. I'm going to go with, it's not this isn't rocket science from me, but Gidley Park, who is now 2 from 2 for Harry Fry, and is definitely a horse to keep a firm eye on. He's beautifully bred, son of Walk in the Park. He's now won his bumper, and he's won his novice hurdle, and it was really taking fashion. He came from quite a long way back and was well on top of the line. And Harry Fry has made no compunction about the fact he thinks this horse is really smart. So looking forward to seeing what Gidley Park can do in the future. Cool. Right, let's get on to racing coming up this weekend. Another kind of barnstormer of a weekend. Apart from action in Ireland, which is really good at Punchestown, we're going to be talking about the British action headlined by Haydock. And we're going to talk about 3 races from there, including, of course, the 200 grand Grade 1 Betfair Chase, the first Grade 1 of the season here in the UK. But starting off with the 220, it's the Premier Stayers Handicap Hurdle. This used to be over the fixed brush hurdles, not anymore. It's over 3 miles, half a furlong, and it's very, very competitive indeed. Jake, what do you think about this one?
Yeah, well, I've taken a bit of a long-term view on this race, to be honest. So obviously going to be harping back on about that well-handicapped horses video again. And one of the ones I put up was Lord Snooty. And like Unexpected Party last week, this was the race that I mentioned for him. I thought that he would be an ideal type for this Betfair Stayers Handicap Hurdle. And thankfully, he's turned up. So again, we've ticked off the first part, and now we're on to the second part of seeing if we can get a winner. But he's a horse that I think is really nice. He was a massive eye catcher at Punchestown at the end of last season when he went over for their festival. He was literally travelling in last place pretty much the whole way around, and then turning for home, went from last to finishing off about 5th place, absolutely storming home. Obviously caught way too far back to win the race, but that was off a mark of 120. And on his previous start, he had some good form in the UK too. On Uttoxeter on Midlands National Day, he was second to Trelawney, who's now rated 143, having won over fences. And obviously, yeah, he looks like a really nice horse for Kim Bailey. So he's got some good form in the UK, obviously ran well in Ireland. And then I think the only strange thing about him is that for some reason, obviously he's been targeted at this race, but for some reason they needed to get prep run into him and they decided to go to Galway for that. I don't really know what the thinking was there, but he went over to Galway last month, ran a pretty good race. He was going to finish about, I'd say probably around 3rd or 4th. But then he got to a second last and just made a complete Horlicks of a mistake. It pretty much stopped him in his tracks, lost all momentum, and then just had to quietly come home for 7th place. But that was a race won by Buddy One, who's obviously gone on to thank the form last weekend at Cheltenham. So if he had finished 3rd, obviously it would have been a very good 3rd, but his handicap mark would have suffered as a result of that. So he's stuck in at the bottom of the weights here. He's off a mark of 123, so he's carrying about 10 stone 8. Should be absolutely ideal for a track like this. And I think the long Haydock straight is just going to suit him down to the ground. I don't know what position obviously he's going to end up being turning for home, but I think he's going to be absolutely flying at the finish. He's been well supported in the Ante-Post markets, and Christian Williams obviously knows exactly how to get one trained for a race like this. So fingers crossed he'll go well.
Yeah, oh, definitely. You know what, the words Jake Price and long-term view is a combination that I just love to put together. So very much looking forward to seeing how Lord Snooty runs. Also, a name that you could also apply to Andrew Blair Wise.
Someone's bitter about last week. I don't know, not getting that impression.
Oh dear, 5,000 views incoming on this one. Dan, let's talk to you about this race. It's a cracker this year, isn't it? A really competitive one. Anyway, it always is, but there's some proper class types in this one.
Yeah, really open. It's one of those where I always try and look for something at a price, and there was a couple that were intriguing, and I thought, yeah, I can see that, but I just kept going back to Crambo. I just remember watching that Aintree race, and now Connor Brace is a jockey, I think, a very good jockey, but he's one of those you kind of know with him. He's an animated jockey. He's a strong rider. Like kind of more your Sam Twiston Davis mold. You kind of know where a horse is based on his body language. I've never seen him ride a horse with just like petulance almost towards the opposition. Like he was sat up like he was on a proper Grade 1 horse. Like literally, there was nothing that could touch this horse, and he's literally just nursed him, just like literally just come on, mate, have a little, just win by a length or two. He's won by 2 lengths in probably the easiest manner I've ever seen. Like, and a £6 rise for that, I thought, was very, very generous indeed. And he was well back, like he couldn't be beaten either. And connections today have come out swinging, saying they've taken bets for the Stayers Hurdle. Whether he can reach those heights, I'm not so sure. But I mean, that Aintree race was won by Stony Mountain and Paisley Park en route to winning this race. He's 4 from 4 over hurdles. You take out the 2 runs in Grade 1s. One of those was a Challow where he pulled up and had wind surgery afterwards. The other one was in the Mersey when he finished 7th. He was badly hampered by a fall of 3 out, and that form was working out really well anyway. I just think he's such a interesting horse with so much more upside. Obviously, he's carrying near the top weight, but I think he is probably the classiest one in here. He could be, given the lack of depth in the Division 1 for graded staying races down the line. Yeah, I just couldn't get away from him. And I'm always on the wrong side of Fergles, which kind of puts me off slightly being more confident than I am, but he's a horse I have a lot of time for, and I think he's got a really massive chance here.
You make a really strong case, Dan, I've got to say. I have to say, watching it back, a £6 rise is kind of crazy lenient. Like, I don't really know what they were looking at. Like, were they watching the same race?
He was all out, Tom. You know what I mean about? I had nothing left at the finish.
Oh, tremendous. I've had this is a bit of a sob story for me about this race actually this week. Because kind of like on Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, I was talking to the boys every day. And I've got a sneaking fancy in the Stayers Handicap Hurdle on Saturday, and it was Highland for Nicky Henderson, and of course he wasn't declared. So unfortunately, my hopes and dreams were shattered at the declaration stage. I was really thought he had a massive chance as well. So unfortunately, my main selection didn't run, but I've consequently looked at the race in more detail. And one horse that I do think is worth an each way nibble is Emitom, the 9-year-old, the old boy, the former class act in the race. But he hasn't had too long with trainer Alan King. I know that Dan is trying to stifle a laugh here, but he hasn't had too long with trainer Alan King. And the 2 runs that he has had for the trainer have been a win in the second. The second was a fine run, actually, after quite a long time off the track last time out. A really good reappearance effort at Newbury. That came a couple of weeks ago. And, £3 for that leaves him ridiculously well in on his old form. Now, I know he's 9, and he's not going to be possibly quite as good as what he was, but 9 should really be prime age for a national hunt horse. So you'd be hoping that even if there's a glimmer of that same kind of spark that remains in Emitom, he should be nicely treated, and he looks that way, really. If building on that pipe opener at Newbury where he finished second behind Young Butler, it was a pretty competitive race. This is obviously more fiendishly competitive than that one was. But I think given the handicap slide and the fact that he hasn't had too long with Alan King, you see it clearly got a nice tune out of him. You look at the way that he finished his career with Warren Greatrex. No slight against Warren this, but it was just he probably needed a change of scenery. He was pulled up, then beaten 17 lengths in the Class 3 handicap hurdle, and then pulled up again in heavy ground at Kelso. Moves to Alan King, wins, beats Highland, of all horses, at Newbury at the end of last season, and then comes back with a nice second behind Young Butler. So he'll do for me. He's about 14-1, which I think is a very fair price. Let's move on then, shall we, to the big race of the weekend, or at least one of them. That's the Betfair Chase Grade 1, also known as the Lancashire Chase for all our older viewers. It's BRAVEMANSGAME, Corach Rambler, Protectorat, and Royal Pagaya, the 4 in this one. Small field here, Jake, but at least we've got the BRAVEMANSGAME element to it. Of course, Daryl Jacob, a little bit of controversy about riding the horse that Harry Cobden sent to Ascot. But my viewing of the race is that Paul Nicholls, I should say, saw the entry stage and thought, well, I might as well chuck BRAVEMANSGAME in here because it doesn't look like it's going to be a very good race.
Yeah, I mean, just firstly on that Harry Cobden thing, a massive mountain has been made out of a molehill there, hasn't it? Like, I don't really see how it was ever a story. He's got loads of rides down at Ascot, loads of nice ones. So look, play on. Yeah, as you say, BRAVEMANSGAME's got the opportunity here to run in a 4-runner race. So you can see why they've done it. But I will stick by my Charlie Hall Chase review that we did on here, where I said that I wouldn't really like him to go here. I mean, I guess that's probably more of a slight on his King George chances than it is on his chances for this race. But yeah, I think it is an afterthought for them. And as such, if you were forcing me to have a play, which I probably won't, because I do think when you've got a race like this, you are kind of splitting hairs between two good horses, especially when they're such short prices. Like, but I think that Protectorat, it has got a really good chance here. Obviously, everyone knows this is Gold Cup. And it kind of reminds me of Bristol Demise second Betfair Chase that he won, where everyone was all over Native River and Mike from the Gold Cup form. They were, classier horses on ratings. They were the more sexy types in the race, but Bristol Demise turned up on the day and put in his usual performance. And I think obviously Protectorat hasn't had a chance to back his performance from last year up yet, but he was very impressive last year. Unfortunately, obviously, Ante-Post didn't finish the race, so we couldn't see exactly how that stacks up, but he jumped well, won easily, very impressive. And I think this is obviously the exact same prep going into this. He's had a wind up again, coming off a long break. And yeah, this is going to be his day. This is his grade 1 to win all season. Anything after this is just a bonus. Like this is his day, and I think he'll be prepped to the minute. I know it's a different level, but Dan has had Knickerbocker Glory do the exact same thing, where he had his prep for the day, was there bang on for Ascot, and I think they'll do the same with Protectorat. There won't be that excuse of him not being able to perform first time out. And yeah, I would have to go with Protectorat at the prices, and just because it is his Gold Cup rather than BRAVEMANSGAME, it's an afterthought.
Yeah, there's no doubt it's his Gold Cup, isn't it? He trains the minute for this by Dan Skelton, whose horses aren't running fantastically at the moment, not finishing their races particularly well, but no doubt Protectorat's going to be tuned to the minute for that. I'll nip in there, Jake. I'm actually going to slightly disagree with you on this. It's always good to have, isn't it, disagreement on podcasts? So I'm going to go against you a little bit, because I'm amazed, actually, that BRAVEMANSGAME isn't shorter than 11 to 10 on for this. I've just looked at the prices now. He's 10 to 11, 2 to 1 for Protectorat. I'd have him 2 to 1 on BRAVEMANSGAME. If he brings his A game, he is much the best in this field. And I know he got tired in the Charlie Hall last time. I know this is an afterthought. Paul Nicholls, though, knows exactly what he's doing. It's the best horse in his yard. He is not going to be, taking this on a whim, having a flyer at this. He's going here thinking he is going to win this. And although it's not, his usual kind of thing, is it, Nicholls, on the way to the King George? He wouldn't usually do this. I think it's notable that he is doing it. And as I say, Dan, I don't know what you think about the prices, but I'm very surprised he's not shorter than that.
Yeah, I think we'll get to a stage where I think he'll maybe go off like 4 to 6. I think there is a bit of overwhelming support for BRAVEMANSGAME, and I can see why. I think this may prove to be very, very astute by Paul Nicholls here, because this is going to be the easiest grade 1 he'll run in all season, even compared to the King George. Like the King George, he may well have Shishkin and some Irish horses come over to take him on. Here, it's just Protectorat and Royal Pagaille, who is admirable. If it was heavy, he'd have more of a chance, but you can't really see it. And Correct Rambler has everything to prove at this level. I think this is going to prove very astute, and it isn't exactly unprecedented, because Silvagnaco Conti finished 5th in a Charlie Hall, then went on to win the Betfair Chase, then went on to win the King George in the same season. So I think there's a bit of that in the back of his mind as well. I just harken back to his novice chase days and almost the start of last season, where they always commented that he was a bit of a weak horse. He couldn't really go up the gallops constantly. He always kind of had to take a bit of a breath. But towards the back end of last season, they basically alluded to that he's a changed horse now. He's much stronger than he used to be. And I think that probably entailed him taking his races better than he used to as well. And realistically speaking, he's going to have the Betfair Chase, going to have the King George, and then he's going to have a break to the Gold Cup. He's probably not going to win a Gold Cup. He'll run well, as he probably always does. But these 2 months or so, these are his 2 main targets. I mean, I don't know how much of an afterthought it is. It probably wasn't plan A after the Charlie Hall, but I think when you assess the situation, you assess the races it's going to be, you assess how his season's really going to pan out. He's probably only going to have 5 runs maximum. I think it makes just an awful lot of sense. And I think if he's improved 10% from the Charlie Hall, he takes all the beating here, and he may not even have to find off the bridle. He might have to do a little bit. I think he'll find a little bit, but I think it won't be until the King George till we see him fully find off the bridle.
Yeah, really interesting comments. Whatever happens, it's going to be a race to sabre, I think. And hopefully, you know what, for the good of the jumps game, it'd be great to see Protectorat really turn up and bring his best, because obviously we didn't see that for the last couple of starts last season. The final race at Haydock we're going to cover is the last race on the cards, 3:35. Betfair free racing multiple today, handicap chase. It's over the extended 3 miles one. Another really competitive race to look at here. I'll go first because I haven't got a huge view on this race, apart from the fact that I'm really looking forward to seeing the return of Eleanor Bob for Venetia Williams and Charlie Deutsch, team who have obviously been in tremendous form. Venetia Williams hasn't dipped below 40% strike rate over the last 4 weeks, which is quite phenomenal, to be perfectly honest. To have that consistency and durability for that length of time is amazing. And she's produced horses in that period from long breaks who are winning first time up. And I think she can produce Eleanor Bob, not necessarily to win first time up, but certainly to run very well. I think she's nicely handicapped off 118, dropped £2 from when she was last seen just under 2 years ago. And she looked progressive when she was last in action, given the way the yard is going and given the fact it's soft ground, 3 miles, 1 furlong. I think it's going to suit her down to the ground. So looking forward to seeing how she gets on. She's around about 9-1. I think that's a very fair price. Dan, come to you first on this one.
Yeah, my first note on this race is literally just many questionable characters here. And I think that kind of summed it up. And to be honest, probably the least questionable based on recent form is Wasdale Dundalk, who I think Lisa Harrison has done spectacularly well with this horse. He was always with John Joe initially, and he had quite a big reputation. He was meant to be a pretty good horse. He got to a mark in the low 120s, but always looked like he should be better and just never really progressed. But since she's got hold of him, she's turned him into a staying chaser. And I mean, he won his first free over 3 miles over fences. Admittedly, this was summer form, which doesn't amount to much, but I think more impressive were his 2 seconds recently in much deeper races. Second to Guetapan Calonge, obviously ran well at Cheltenham the other day. Second to Houston, Texas, who is an up-and-coming chaser in his own right. I think that's rock-solid form in a race like this, where many of these could just not turn up completely. I think he's just a very solid each-way conveyance. 120 will demand another step in the right direction, but there's no horse in better form, and there's no horse that's going to be more fit for this than Wasdale Dundalk. So I thought he was a reasonable enough each-way selection.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. There's plenty of characters in this race, actually, Dan. It's difficult to know who's going to produce their best. And also, any horse who's got the name Dundalk in their name should deserve extra respect, because, of course, it is that fantastic hobby track in Ireland. Jake, what do you reckon about this one?
Yeah, I mean, it is a tricky race. You know, with your Venetia angle there, I thought that Fontaine Collonge would be a certainty to come back here and try and defend her crown, but obviously she didn't end up getting declared. And it made me look through the field, and I really do think that Famous Bridge has a brilliant chance. I know he's towards the head of the market now and probably in favourite most places, but I think that he is a horse who's going to relish this type of trip. If you go to a stable tour of his trainer, he says he wants 3 miles, probably plus, and he handles soft ground. And I think that rings true, really, because he was entered in the Scottish National at the end of last season over 4 miles and ended up being an on-run on the day because it was just too quick for him. But he's a horse that has shaped really well. Like last time out, he was 4th, and he was running over 2.5 miles at air. And again, it was good to soft, so it's probably just on the borderline of him being able to run on it. But he was finished 4th, only beaten 3/4 of a length. And I think everything just went a little bit too quickly for him that day, because every fence down the home straight, he ended up clattering or walking through, or he just couldn't get his jumping game together, because I think they just were going that stride too quick. Whereas obviously going to 3 mile, 1.5 furlong at Haydock, you're not going to get a bit of going too quick. So I think he'll be able to be a bit more measured, use his stamina. And towards the end of last season in March, he won a 3 mile race at Wetherby, and Sean Quillen actually rode him that day, gave him a really nice ride. He now jumps back aboard because Brian Hughes is elsewhere. So I think he's got a really good chance. He was only put up £1 for his last run. He's off a mark of 129 now, but they were looking at the rehearsal chase for him. They've obviously eyed this as a good opportunity to try and win a race before that, because obviously the rehearsal is next weekend. So look, I think he'll have a really good chance here. And I think if he does go on to win it, I think something like the Roland Merrick on Boxing Day could be, you know, an export of cool. But yeah, Famous Bridge, I think he's got a really good chance.
Right, also on Saturday, apart from Haydock, we've got Ascot to look forward to, man, because, of course, it is Thanksgiving weekend as well. But 3 races we're going to cover at Ascot include, first of all, the 130, which is the Nirvana Spa 1965 Chase Grade 2. 4 runners going to post for this one. Pictor Shishkin, Manila Drama, and Straw Fan Jack. Looks to be a 2-horse race. Jake, what do you think? Pick Dorhe or Shishkin? Or indeed, one of the other two?
No bet. This is one of the biggest no bet races I think I've ever seen. As I said with Haydock, like when you've got 2 horses at the front of the market that are so short, but either one could feasibly win, like it is just splitting hairs as to where you're finding your opinion of who beats who. I think in this case, Shishkin obviously has the way better chance on that Ascot Gold Cup form. Peak Dory's got it all to find to beat him on that. But I did really like what Peak Dory did at Aintree. He won that Manning Chase very well. But yeah, no, I'm looking forward to seeing what happens on the day. I think it's going to be a good race to watch. But in terms of betting, I don't think there's a whole pile of opportunity here.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree with that. I can't wait to watch it. It's going to be a cracking race to watch. I think Shishkin, if cheap pieces work, which I think they probably will do, he's the sort of horse looks like he might need them. I think he should win this. As much as I respect Pick Dorhe, Shishkin's proper class.
Yeah.
Dan, no bet race for you too, I imagine, or maybe not.
Oh yeah, no, I wouldn't be touching this with a barge pole. But Shishkin's an interesting one because the cheap pieces. I mean, in the Ryanair, he didn't go a yard, okay, but at Aintree, he travelled, but then got outpaced and then crawled over the line. Is he just slower and older? Like, is it really a matter of him needing cheek pieces? Because this is going to be sharp enough. 2 mile 5 on quickish ground. Pick Dorhe still on an upward curve. He ended his season with a career best. Like you said, here's money. You have to use it on this race. I'd go with Pick Dorhe. Like Shishkin in peak form batters him, no question. Yeah. But you've got to have serious questions about which Shishkin turns up these days. And is he just not the horse he was that he can get away with it in 2 mile 5? And also his main aim is the King George. Say he's 10 lengths down on the turn, getting scrubbed along. Is Nico going to give him a really hard time, or will he kind of be happy just to stay on into second with the King George in mind? That would be in the back of my mind if you're thinking about backing him at such a short price.
Is it going to rain on Saturday? Is it going to rain on Saturday? Because that's our theory, isn't it? If it rains and Shishkin just doesn't turn up,
that's true,
he doesn't fancy it. If it's sunny, he'll be absolutely fine.
He's a proper fair weather horse. I think campaign him like in the summer next season.
Yeah,
I think that'd be great. Yeah, Shishkin at Stratford. That's what I'd like to see.
Are you guys gonna laugh me out the building if I say I think Manila Drama's got a chance of maybe picking up second place? Well, I don't think to answer because he's left the building. Jake, are you gonna have the same reaction?
I think you're trying to complicate the uncomplicated here.
Well, do you know what? Okay, put it this way. I think he will run a very good race. How about that?
Yeah.
I think he'll run
third.
I have to say I wouldn't be. I mean, these are 2 horses who are coming into it. The reason I'm saying this is because he ran a blinder on his return and he's had a return. Like he's coming here race fit. I know the other 2 will be fit from home, whatever, but he's had her under his belt, which is a big plus, and it was a really good one in the Old Rowan, and you ran a cracker. I can see him running very well. Look, I'm not saying he's going to win because he isn't going to win. I wouldn't be at all surprised if Shishkin puts on a show and Manila Drama maybe causes a bit of an upset and finishes second. I wouldn't be that surprised. Just putting it out there. Cool. Let's move on to the 205, the Coral Hurdle, Grade 2. And Goshen is here without Jamie Moore. So, yeah, we send our best wishes to Jamie Moore. Hopefully he'll recover nicely from those horrible injuries he suffered. Niall Houlihan is on board. So Royal, Strong Leader, Blue King Daru, and Theatre Glory in this. Dan, I found when I looked at this race, I thought it was, I know there's only 5 runners, but I mean, how hard is this one to work out?
Yeah, again, not a race I think I'll be getting. I think this weekend in general, like I think we're honest on here, like this, it's a very low stakes weekend for me betting wise. Like I might have 1 or 2 bets and that'll probably be about it. This is another race I'm not really interested in having a bet. I love when I make my notes because I literally just write what's in my head. So I've just put the first line. There is literally no scenario where I want to back Goshen. And I think that kind of, I mean, if I was going to have a bet, I think I'd just take a chance on Strong Leader as the outside of the field because he's just been crying out for this step up in trip. Run style, pedigree. I mean, he's damned by Westner and related to a Hennessy winner. It's all stamina. You have to forgive a really terrible run last time out, but is that form before that? I mean, he ran all right in a Supreme. His second at Aintree was good enough, although it probably flattered him. I mean, the rest of these, I mean, Theatre Glory, I thought got flattered at the end of the season to get as close to the likes of Napa's Hill as she did, because she set a slow tempo out in front and they finished in a proper bunch. So Royale's just old and Goshen's Goshen. And Blue King Daru's a 4-year-old. So I won't be having a bet. If I was, again, forced, I'd take a little bit of a stab on Strong Leader.
I'm with you on Strong Leader in the step up and trip, and then it's going to see a new horse probably this season, actually. So we're looking forward to seeing that. And of course, Sean Burr and Ollie Murphy in great form this week. They landed quite a few decent pots for weekday racing. I think Theatre Glory is, if I was going to have a tinkle in this, it's probably on her, just because she's got a really good return record, reappearance record, has won plenty on return in the past, and she gets that nice weight allowance down the bottom. But I mean, again, it's not confident, and I mean, you could really see any one of the 5 winning, apart from possibly, I agree with you, Dan, So Royal. I thought it was a really lifeless effort last time, and it does look as though age might just be catching up with them. I hope it isn't, but that's the way it looked to me. Jake, what do you make of the race?
Yeah, I mean, if Strong Leader hadn't had that run the other day, then I think that he would be all the rage here and, be put up by tipsters left, right and centre. Dan has decided to stick with him, even though he's run an absolute shocker last time, which I admire. But I'd be with you here. I think that if I had to have a bet, and I may well do if she ends up drifting, and that's Theatre Glory getting weight all round. As Dan said, that Sandown race at the end of the last season was an absolute joke. Like, Nico went out in front on her, you dictated the race, absolutely, but made it into a sprint up the straight, which just was, I don't understand it at all. But anyway, her form is good. She was third to Grey Dawning in a handicap. She also won that listed mares hurdle in Warwick in February as well. So look, she's got form good enough to win a race like this. I'm sure she'll have been prepped for today. As you said, her record fresh is pretty decent. And yeah, just getting weight all round, I think she'll have a good chance. It's not the strongest coral hurdle you'll ever see.
No, it's not. Heartily agree with that. Let's move on then swiftly, shall we, to the last race we can talk about. That's the 3:15 handicap chase over the extended 2 miles. 125 grand here up for grabs, so really valuable. And Jake, I've got to say, I'm looking forward to hearing your selection.
A bit of collusion going on here, is there? Yeah. As Dan said earlier, on a Saturday where it's full of graded action, where it can be hard to find betting opportunities. Obviously, we've got a nice handicap to get stuck into here. It's not the easiest, but we've got the dead 8, so that's useful for each way betting. And yeah, the horse I actually do like here is Fair Dams for Dan Skelton. Now, last season he was very progressive with fences. And, he beat Haydock over on his chase debut. Obviously, that rival's now rated 150. And then he went and followed up at Newbury as well, at their Winter Carnival meeting, where he beat Orcan Risk, who's now rated 144, and That's Right Gino, 148, was back in third. So 2 really good, promising efforts. He was then giving a bit of a break and came back in the spring. And he didn't really look the same horse. He was second to Black Jerry over this course and distance, and he's rated 140. So that was a good effort. But then they really quickly turned him around to air, and I think that was probably the wrong decision. They probably should have called stumps there and targeted him at this season as a stronger horse. So he came back to the track last month, had a bit of a blowout really, because I read Dan Skelton's stable tour the other day, and he said that he really needed that run when he was beaten 14 lengths into 5th place behind Boot Hill the other day. So hopefully he comes on for that. Obviously he'll need to, but with the weight swings that he's going to get here, thanks to Tristan Durrell taking off £5, it's actually quite crazy. He's going to be £13 better off with Boot Hill. He's going to be £6 better off with Saint Segal. And he's also going to be £6 better off at Orcan Risk on that run last season, despite obviously beating him that day. So I think there's plenty to like about him. The drying ground at Ascot, obviously there's been no rain this week, so it's already good to soft, good in places. That's going to suit him a lot better than the soft ground did last month. If he's spot on fitness wise, I think he's got a great chance.
I'm just going to completely echo everything you just said. It was a very comprehensive argument, and I completely agree. He's my best bet of the weekend, Fred. I think he's got a massive chance. I'm going to go.
Sorry, Jake.
Throwing a lump penalty there.
I will now be laying him.
I will go very briefly into my reasoning, which is literally everything you said, Jake. Plus, on that run last time, if you watch it back, the way he travelled into the race, he travelled better than anything. He travelled better than Boot Hill coming around the home turn. And as you say, he just completely blew up. He really needed the run. And if he comes on for that, if he keeps that cruising pace that he had coming around the bend a little bit further on and then finds some pressure, he will win on Saturday. It's just a question if he can do it.
Win.
There is an if there, obviously, but like I think he's got stupendous claims in that race if everything goes correctly. So yeah, fingers crossed he can feel the benefit of that run. The only slight concern I have is if maybe the run was needed, yes, fine, but he did bottom out very fast. So that would be my slight concern. He didn't find anything for pressure. So you got to use that run as an excuse, the return. But hopefully it was needed, and he will find this time. Also, Brothers in Arms translates. Oh, sorry, Fred Arm translates as Brothers in Arms, and or Brother in Arms.
There we go.
There you go. And Brother in Arms was the greatest album ever made by a band called Dire Straits. So there you go. It's all coming together nicely. Dan, what do you think about that one?
You are some man. This is how you pull these links out your ass on racing TV. It's just strings after string. Where does it come from? It's just superb. There's no subject this man doesn't know inside out. So good.
There are many.
So, well, yeah. Some would say 2 mile handicap chases at Ascot, but it's, you know, I looked at Fred Arms, and yeah, completely see it. Is he not just the weakest finisher you'll ever see? To an extent, is it maybe just a bit flattering to deceive? You could say that maybe you could maybe say that about Saint Seagal as well, but I'm going to give him a chance. If there's any other horse who screamed he can win a race like this, it's Saint Seagal. Like 3 weeks ago, he just carted himself into the lead like far too keenly, and you're thinking, oh, it's just going to fold away tamely here. He got swarmed just after 2 out by about 3 or 4 of them. I think he'll finish 5th or 6th, beating 20 lengths, still shaped really nicely. And yet he somehow managed to rally to get back up for 3rd, finishing stronger than those who came from off the pace, which to me, that was eye-catching, namely because it was his first run after a wind-up. So for a horse who's often travelled really well and not found as much as expected, the fact that he was able to actually find a bit at the end after a wind-up maybe suggested to me that he was learning that he could breathe in a finish, which could be invaluable in a race like this, and given that he's going to need to find to win something like this. And also that Jane Williams' runners often just improve bundles for their first run. It happens season after season. Her juvenile herders in particular always rings true. Like she'll have one who finishes like 2nd or 3rd, beating 10 lengths. They'll often go very close next time out, just how they train them. This horse has got bundles of talent, and I think the presence of Auken Risk and Corrigine Rock will ensure that he doesn't have to cart himself to the front this time around. There'll be other pace angles in there. If he can sit in behind and travel as strongly as he did last time out, I think he'll take a lot of beating. He's only 5. He's the type who could kick on 10, 15 pounds higher than this and run in these types of races for a good few years. You could say they should win a race like this about 5 or 6 in here, but I've always liked the horse. I've never really backed him. I've always kind of admired from afar. I'm going to give him a chance here to prove my patience is justified, but it's a good race. I'm looking forward to it.
It's a really good race and a massive prize pot as well. So looking forward to that immensely. Let's move on quickly then to other things other business on the cards we're looking forward to. I'll start because I've only got one horse in particular that I wanted to mention, and that is the final race actually at Ascot on Saturday. That's a bumper and sees Tradecraft running and making his debut for Nicola Boinville and Nicky Henderson. The last horse we saw in the care of Nicky Henderson and owned by Michael Buckley was, of course, Constitution Hill. And Michael Buckley is very selective with horses that he gets hold of. We've seen it in the past with Finian's Rainbow, Spirit Sun, Constitution Hill, obviously now, and Tradecraft would have been chosen with care. There is no doubt about that by Michael Buckley. But main reason, actually, I wanted to bring this up was because he is a son of Blue Bressel, and his dam is a mare called Ralston Lass. And she actually was owned by my godfather, but not only was she owned by him, she was also bred by him. So it's quite exciting for him to have Ralston Lass as the dam of potentially a good horse in the making. But of course, we all hope he runs well. So fingers crossed, Tradecraft can make a nice opening start at Ascot on Saturday. Dan, what about you? Anything else on Saturday or Sunday?
You know what? I don't have anything for Saturday that really strikes out at me. If there is, it'll be on Twitter, and I haven't really looked at Sunday yet. It's one of those weekends for me. Like I said earlier, I will not be getting heavily involved betting-wise. Okay. And Jake, yourself?
Yeah, I've got 2 to mention. The first one comes over at Punchestown, actually. And in the 158, it's a handicap chase. And Adamantly Chosen turns up here. Now, it's soft to heavy ground at Punchestown. I think that's going to be a good angle with him here. He's got a good record over intermediate trips. Obviously, he was second to Jerry Colomb at Limerick last Christmas, and he's also second to Mighty Potter at the DRF as well. So if you can put it all together, soft to heavy ground, 2.5 miles, mark of 148 doesn't look too bad. He won a 2 mile, 2.5 furlong Grade 3 novice chase at Punchestown as well, so the track suits. Yeah, he'll be a bet for me. And then in the 2:48 at Huntingdon, MacLean makes his chase debut, also his stable debut for Richard Bandy. He's a big chasing type. He was only beaten half a length by General Medrano, who's now rated 134 at Exeter in April. He's off a mark of 118. I think that looks pretty lenient.
Great stuff. Good luck with both those, Jake. Gents, thanks very much indeed. Been a lot of fun this week, as it always is. You two fine young specimens. Please do remember to like and subscribe to our channel. It really does help us. And comment with your biggest fancy of the weekend. It'd be great to hear from you. Obviously, lots of Grade 1 action and indeed competitive handicaps as well. And please do say if you agree with Fred Arm, because both Jake and I are very keen. Dan, not so much. Thanks very much for watching. We'll see you next time on The Jump Show.